And APIs are very important in software, so anytime anybody builds something for Windows, they have to think about various APIs that are part of the Windows environment, and they have to think about that when they develop something for the iPhone and various other platforms out there. In general, what happens is people build a software platform, and then they think about building an API, which in a sense is a little side door in the platform that lets other people come in and access some of the data there. Okay. Google Maps, for instance, has an API. That's why we have so many maps out there on the web. It's because Google created the whole mapping platform, and then they created an API so that other people could come along and enter data very easily, and you could create a little interesting mashup of your city. You saw some of them last night. I'm sure other people have shown them over the course of the conference. That's a classic API thing. You build a cool software platform, and then you build a little API that people can talk to outside developers who aren't necessarily on your payroll. What Twitter did is something quite profound. They built the API first. They started by thinking about their service as a platform that other people were going to build on from the very beginning. And then they built Twitter.com on top of it. So the service that you guys use, they thought of it as just kind of, they were the #1 developers for an API, and then other people were going to access that API in the exact same way that they were. That sounds a little technical, but it's a very important kind of philosophical idea here. Is that you're building platforms that are entirely open. They're thought of as open from the very, very beginning. One argument that I think is important to start thinking about is that every city is going to have an API down the line. And the API is going to have data for crime reports, it's going to have data about real estate values, it's going to have data about government spending, it's going to have data about potholes in the street. And there's going to be a standardized way of describing that information, and any developer, any programmer who wants to come in and talk to that API to build a new application to work on that data in a novel way will be able to do that because there's a standardized API. So thinking about an API as part of the city strategy is very important. But, it's going to be a kind of commonplace thing in the next couple of years. So Twitter thought of itself from the API first, and then it built Twitter on top of that. And that meant that from the very beginning, there were lots of different clients, lots of different Twitter kind of software packages on people's phones, on their BlackBerries, on their iPhones, on the web, where people could use Twitter as a service without ever going to twitter.com. There's a huge number of people who just never go, who are active participants in the social network of Twitter, but they actually never, other than the day they signed up, they've never actually visited twitter.com because they use, I use a program on my iPhone called Tweety. Twitter didn't make Tweety. Some other developer made Tweety, and it's actually better than using the regular Twitter web app on my phone. So Twitter is losing audience on some level. The person who goes to the Tweety, launches the Tweety app and buys the Tweety app, none of that money is going to the Twitter.com people, right? They're losing that revenue. But their idea is that if you create an open platform and you get lots and lots of people involved in that ecosystem, coming in wherever they want, whether it's Tweety or some other application, and adding their data to the underlying social network, to the underlying social graph, in the long run, Twitter will be more valuable as a company. So it's worth it to lose that kind of short-term revenue to build a big platform and to build a big social graph. And so they created this open platform that anybody can develop for. And what that meant is that Twitter, in a sense, had this whole army of people outside the organization who were innovating with the service. They basically said to the entire world of developers who were interested in the Twitter platform, you can be our research and development team. You can create new things based on our platform. We don't have to pay you a cent. And so what's happened has been this amazing flowering of innovation around the Twitter platform. Well, I'll just show you a couple of ones. Some of these you've probably seen. This is something called Twitter Map, one of a number of Twitter platforms. Increasingly now, tweets can come with basic geographic data like latitude and longitude. If you're carrying it around and tweeting from your phone, if you approve this, your geographic coordinates can be embedded in the little message you send out in those, in addition to those 140 characters. And so what Twitter Map does is it sits there in real time and looks for tweets that are in any particular geographic region. So this is what I did this morning. I went there and zoomed in on Curitiba, and these were the most recent 5 tweets from people kind of in downtown Curitiba. It would be fun to do it right now because I'm sure there would be a bunch of tweets here. Most of you saying mean things about me, I'm sure. And so this is developed, completely outside of Twitter, and there are countless map applications that are out there. And to this date, Twitter, I think actually they just released a trending topics map just the other day, I think. But I think that may have been the first actual map application that Twitter had released kind of 2 years, 3 years into the company's growth. They hadn't bothered to create a mapping application because so many other people were doing it for them. And they were able to just kind of rely on all that kind of innovation and development because they created a platform and an ecosystem that enabled that. Now, another really interesting example of an urban-based social network that uses Twitter as well as a bunch of other things is a service called Foursquare, which celebrated its first birthday, I believe, yesterday or today, maybe even. How many people have heard of Foursquare? Okay, Foursquare is coming your way. It's a very, very interesting service. So what Foursquare is Foursquare is kind of a combination of a social network and a real-world video game, in a sense. And what you do with Foursquare is whenever you go to a place, in this case, a coffee house. This is a coffee house called Think Coffee in New York, I believe. When you go there, you can check in on Foursquare. And check in basically means you pull out your iPhone and you say, hey, I'm in Think Coffee, and you check in, and the system records that you're there. It will, if you wanted to, it will send out a little alert to your friends telling them that you're there, so if they want to come and hang out and join you in Think Coffee, or at that bar last night that you all wanted me to come join you at. You can do that very easly. So it records that, it sends out that message. You can leave little hints about each place. You can say, hey, the flat white coffee here is really fantastic, and so anybody who visits that place in the future will see those hints. You can automatically use it to send out a message to Twitter as well, saying, hey, I just checked in to Think Coffee. Every time you check into a place, you basically accumulate points for that place. And as you spend more time in a given place, there's a leaderboard that shows the top-ranking people who spent the most time in any given establishment. So, you'll see there are 3 people who spent more time in Think Coffee than you, and if you show up there 5 more times, you might get to the top of that leaderboard. And the person who is at the top of the leaderboard is officially called the mayor of that place, the mayor of Think Coffee. And you get little badges as you go through it. So it's all the reward system of a video game where you're trying to earn points and unlock levels and all this kind of stuff. But it's done entirely by going out and hanging out in your city and letting your friends know where you are. And it turns out that those badges are weirdly addictive. Even though technically you're not getting anything for being mayor of Think Coffee, people just want to be mayor of Think Coffee. And so the proprietors of all these establishments love it. Because this is like a frequent flyer program, basically, for the establishment. They've got people who are going in, doing check-ins again and again at these establishments so that they can rise on the leaderboard and become the mayor. And so now Foursquare has started talking to the owners of these places and saying, listen, you should be able to do special offers for your top customers. We're tracking who your top customers are, and we know who their friends are. We can now send out messages through that if you'd like to promote something. And so you'll be walking around the city and you'll get a message like this. It says mayor offer nearby. Nearby at Bowery Wine Company, if you're the mayor, show the bartender and your first drink is free. Beer, house wine, please. No fancy drinks at Bowery Wine Company, right? And so what you have is this whole system that benefits people who are just hanging out and want to meet up with their friends, and it benefits the businesses and the organizations in the community who are going to have a more kind of in-touch relationship with the people who are frequenting their establishment. So it's a very interesting model. And again, it's integrated heavily into Twitter, and it's possible to do that because Twitter was based on an open platform.